It's the Financial Fitness Media Network from coast to coast, border to border. We're putting your financial house in order. Thanks for having us on today. Rob Palermo's at microphone number 2. We're talking with Paul Cella from the Keyarks Group, and I think we want to talk a bit of LTC, Rob.
Yes, we do. Obviously, we talk on this show all the time about long-term care and how concerned you have to be in your retirement years, how much money that can involve if you're not covered. And I know, Paul, there are some life products out there that incorporate long-term care. Could you give us some detail on some of that?
Absolutely. And it's great. Just great question. So let me just start with this. People don't often think about long-term care and the need for it, whether it's in-home or an assisted facility or a nursing home. And no one wants to go to a nursing home, but even if you need care. But over 65, couples over 65, there's an over 60% chance, I don't have the exact number, but it's well over 60% that one of those two in the couple will need some form of long-term care.
Right.
Beyond 65. And what I look at while we were talking about insurance is insurance has evolved over the years. So I often say to people, do you have an old life insurance policy or an old form of insurance, or do you have the new type? And people, they always roll their eyes, what is a new type? And there are different types of insurance. There are life insurance policies today that, and I know this sounds crazy, but you don't have to die to enjoy, okay? So if you die, well, no one wants to die.
Life insurance for the living.
Right, there's insurance for the living. And there are policies today, while you're going through this review process, that you may want to entertain or just get educated on. There are life insurance policies today. Let's say you buy a policy for $1 million. If you need long-term care, you can utilize those dollars of the policy. So if you were to utilize $300,000 of that $1 million policy and then eventually pass away, your beneficiaries get $700,000.
Nice.
But you could utilize those dollars. So most people say, I don't know if I need life insurance. I think the kids may be okay, or I want it to go to a trust or my estate. But here's an asset that you can utilize for multiple contingencies. There's also one other item. There are asset-based life insurance policies today. So let's say a couple has some money in a CD. You had $200,000, $300,000 in a CD or a liquid account. You can take $100,000, let's say, and you can put it into a life policy, an asset-based life policy today, they're called. And let's say if you need long-term care, that may get you, depending upon age, the numbers vary, but if you were to have $100,000, it may get you $400,000 of long-term care. If you were to pass away, there may be a $250,000 death benefit. And then if you are in the policy for 4, 5, 6 years, 10 years, there's a guaranteed remainder of cash value if you want it to get out. So typically, $100,000 money in the policy, there would be a guaranteed number. Usually it's about 80% of the cash that you put in is guaranteed if you wanted an exit strategy. So here's an asset-based item where you can take a dormant asset like a CD and get a 2.5 fold on if you pass away, and maybe get a 4-fold for long-term care. That's an interesting program that's out there.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
You know, Paul, I want to drag you backwards a little bit because you hinted at it, but let's talk. Somebody listening right now might say, oh, long-term care, that's not going to be me. I'm never going to deal with that. And I got to tell you, I'm seeing it more and more out there. And you start looking at the environment around us, longevity. People are living longer. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, even though we're physically living longer, our bodies aren't necessarily keeping up. Our minds aren't keeping up. And I agree with you. You know, it seemed like when I was a kid, Rob, they retired and within a few years they left this earth. Well, people aren't now. I was at an aging symposium down in Florida a couple of years ago, and, life expectancy in the last little over century has gone from 40-some years to now 80-some years. And the opinion was at the end of this century that we're in now that life expectancy will be at 100. By the end of the next century, it'll be at 150. But the reality is it's like running a machine. Things start breaking down. Where I'm heading with this is it's more realistic now than it's ever been.
Absolutely.
I mean, ever. In that aging conference, Paul, they were saying if you're a couple, if there's two couples, so and a lot of our listeners in Florida, if you're a couple age 65 and older and you know another couple age 65 and older, one of you will live past age 95. Mm-hmm. Is that going to be in the condition you're in right now? Probably not. You're not going to be able to drive a car. You're not going to be as mobile, which means how do you pay these bills? Then we get the other side, Paul, which is if you have never looked at the cost of a nursing home or assisted living or just assistance, somebody coming in your house to check on you, boy, you want sticker shock that will just blow you away. So this long-term care to me, which seemed like such an exotic thing, like it's almost like, well, that'd be like me insuring my legs or something from Lloyd's of London. It's real. It's here.
Absolutely.
You are, whoever's listening to me, I'm telling you, you're going to deal with it. Be it your parent, a spouse, yourself, you're going to deal with long-term care.
So without this kind of coverage, your estate and the things that you've worked your entire life for can dwindle to nothing very quickly.
Absolutely. And Rob, Daryl, what I suggest is most people plan for retirement. So you'll say, okay, what is Social Security going to pay? What is that pension going to pay from the Teachers Association or whatever it may be? And what we encourage clients to do, we encourage everybody to do, is run a retirement analysis from your advisor or whoever you work with, your accountant, but run that retirement analysis. See how your assets are they going to meet your goals in retirement from all your sources, your rental income, whatever. But then put on a what-if scenario. God forbid, what if we had a claim at 80 years old, we're one of us, and depending upon the area of the country, we have different care costs all over the country that we can give to people. But what is the cost of that what if scenario? And we often see people that were fine for retirement, but if there was a long-term care claim, their assets blow up. And it's a horrible thing because you've worked your whole life to make sure you're okay, and then here's a what if that you didn't think about. So what we encourage people to do is think of those. We all don't want to die. We all don't want to go in a long-term care facility. But you know what? You don't want to be a burden to your kids. What if it happens? How can I download that exposure? How can I mitigate that risk and really build it into my retirement plan? It's part of an income plan.
And certainly, Daryl touched on this earlier. Since folks are living longer and longer, costs are always going to be going up.
Oh, yeah.
On the care coverage side. So given that, the scenario you're painting becomes more and more likely.
Oh, absolutely. And it's just something to think about. Don't get caught up in it, but just have a plan. I'll say this: a plan is not just buying insurance or not buying the asset products that we mentioned before, but having a plan is, hey, if something does happen to me or my wife, the kids have acknowledged that they're going to take care of us, or we have the financial means to withstand that type of claim. But go through the what if, and having a true income plan, you got to think about these contingencies. So an insurance usually is a pennies on a dollar alternative, but having a plan is just going through the drill with you and your kids and the family.
Very good.
And look, this is the reality. And I had an aha moment, Paul, a few years ago when, not coming from really the insured side of the financial industry, I always said, well, hey, look, Brad, you want to make sure you have life insurance. God forbid something happened to you. You want to make sure Tiffany's covered. And a friend of mine said, well, Daryl, that's a big deal, but that's not the biggest deal. Because when Brad leaves this earth, there's a void, but there's something more damaging that could happen to Brad and his family. What if Brad becomes disabled?
Oh, yeah.
So he's a loss for the family, but he's still a cost to the family because he's physically still with us, but he's no longer able to. And I look at long-term care the same way. We're so focused on life insurance and other things that the reality is disability, which long-term care is a disability. That disability is more financially devastating than if, no offense, Brad, if he just left this earth.
Absolutely. It's a great point. And I actually call long-term care the disability for your assets. So if you think about it, if you don't have long-term care, you can have amassed $1 million in IRAs and qualified plans, and you could rip through that in a short period of time.
That changed my thinking. I never thought of it that way. And ever since, I'm like, wow, you're right. The worst thing you could do is get hurt and live. Get hurt and die. We got it. We can pick up the pieces and move on.
We did a show not long ago, Daryl and Rob, called "What If You Live."
That's right.
A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about more people spend more time planning for their vacation than they do on their retirement.
Absolutely.
Some of the downfalls.
Absolutely.
It's horrible. Hey, we're talking with Paul Cella of the Key Arcs Group. We've got one segment to go. Thanks for being with us today. We're putting your financial house in order all along the Financial Fitness Media Network.